King Gizzard and the Lizard Wizard. You had to get all those Izzard words in there. You didn't get Eddie Izzard. You didn't get them all. Radio Dead Air. Before that, Green Day. Wake me up when September is. Why is my slideshow not working? There we go. I set this up for slideshow. I don't want the same thing for stupid Windows. Green Day, wake me up when September ends. We're not there yet. Potter Puppet Pals. Well, that's a blast from the past there. Earth, Wind, and Fire, September. You knew that was coming tonight. You just knew it. And LSD, Thunderclouds. Radio Dead Air, KRDA, Monday night. Lots more to come live. What the fuck is wrong with you in about 40 minutes? Let's talk comic books. Shall we? You may have been aware there's a little bit of a thing going on the social medias regarding something called Comicsgate. Now, right off the bat, they're stupid because it's our own fault. It's our own fault, really. We started adding the word gate, which is not even, it's G-A-T-E. Is that actually a word? Because I think that's not. We started adding gate to every scandal in the world of politics. Started with Watergate and the reason why is not even because gate is an actual suffix. It was the name of the hotel that was broken into by agents of President Nixon. Gate's a word. All right. I was thinking G-A-I-T for some reason. But we started adding gate to everything after that. Every scandal became a gate, even though it was completely nonsensical. It meant nothing, but it was slowly seeped into the public consciousness as indicative of a political scandal. Why? I don't know. We're not bright. But then came Gamergate, which didn't make any sense. Now, Comicsgate is even less sense, because Gamergate had this pretense of ethics and journalism. Fine, it's a scandal. This one isn't really a scandal. This isn't kind of a scandal at all. In so much as it's a complaint. And, it's pretty much what it comes down to. It's a complaint. The complaint, despite whatever they tell you, just generally circles around the idea that there are too many people who aren't white dudes writing stories about not white dudes. And that's what's killing comics. Not exactly a scandal, but okay. Okay. Well, I have to discount that notion immediately because I actually read comics for a long time. I still read a few. And we'll get into why. That's not what's killing comics. I want to break down exactly where we are in comic books right now. And I'll give you an example from when I was much, much, much younger. I was a kid. The record seller comic book. I'm pretty sure this is still the record. was X-Men #1, Volume 2. That one single comic book, that one book, sold... Hey, Grady, you getting comfy back there? Okay. That book sold over 8 million copies. One comic, one title, one issue. 8 million. And it kind of wasn't a one-off either. Lots of books back then sold millions of copies each month across the entire product line. Millions every month. Not even just the #1s. They sold like crazy. But then the market collapsed, mainly due to something we call the speculators boom. Everybody thought every single #1 was going to be worth $1 billion in the future. Everyone thought, well, if I buy X-Force #1 in its bag right now, if I buy The Death of Superman in its poly bag with its armband, yeah, it came with an armband, came with a Superman memorial armband. If I buy that in its poly bag, I'll go to college on that shit. Which no one really kind of understood, that the reason the old comics were so valuable was because there were very damn few of them left, and the new comics were being published by the hundreds of millions. If you want a copy of X-Force #1, it ain't hard to find. There are so many of them out there, still in their bags, completely untouched. The market collapsed because that speculator boom couldn't sustain itself. And the aftermath of that was a lot of flailing by the industry. A lot of flailing. And a lot of doubling down on things that, you know, were... I've come to call quarter-to-quarter thinking. Sure, they'll make money right now, but in the long term, if you keep doing it, you're going to kill people's tolerance for these big things that are supposed to be, oh my God. This once-in-a-lifetime event happens every 6 months. And it did. They were short-term shots in the arm that stopped being really effective. And comics never grew. It never grew outside of a certain demographic. It never acknowledged that there was competition for those entertainment dollars either. Webcomics happened. They blew up. Manga got big. And part of why manga got big was comics prices kept rising as readers kept leaving. But manga prices, much more affordable, a whole lot more story for a whole lot less money. And instead of lowering prices, instead of trying to find ways to engage new readers, instead of trying to find ways to increase the market share, to bring in new blood as old blood left, and people did leave, they kept doubling down on things that were making people leave, like raising the cover price. Cover prices did not used to rise so fast. When I was younger, yeah, cover prices rose gradually. Over the course of maybe 15 years, I saw the cover price of comics go from 50 cents to $1.50. That was over 10 years. Then all of a sudden, dollar rises in prices were happening in a much faster cycle. To the point where what was a $2 comic book was 5 years later a $4 comic book. But comics weren't offering more. They were actually offering less. Less story. More ads. And whereas in just about, I know there's some exceptions to this, but just about every other entertainment corner of media, digital distribution has resulted in lower prices. You can get whole seasons of television shows for $5, depending on where you go, as long as you get it digital. Movies are cheaper either as digital or as a digital rental. They're cheap. You can get a movie for $1 as a rental. $1. That's even cheaper in terms of inflation and whatnot. That's cheaper than when you actually had to go to a store to rent movies. Digital distribution has lowered prices. And part of that's to be expected because you don't have to make a physical copy. You don't have to ship a physical copy. You don't have to have a store space to market a physical copy, or you don't have to send that physical copy to someone. Digital distribution has lowered prices, except in comic books. So the price of a digital comic is quite often on parity with the price of the physical comic. And that sounds ridiculous, because it is ridiculous. But it's ridiculous with a purpose. A bad one. Right now, comics have a distribution model called direct marketing, which means that individual issues, the month-to-month titles, don't go to bookstores, typically, or any place else outside of the local comic shop. This is another fallout from the speculators boom. It's also kind of a fallout from what we called the Comics Code Authority, where you couldn't sell comics in a grocery store if they featured adult content or swear words or violence or any number of things. In order to sell those kind of comic books, you needed a specialized store. And that's where local comic book shops came in, and that's part of why books started moving over to them. But now there is no more Comic Code Authority. So why aren't those books in regular stores? Diamond, the only remaining company in America, the only remaining publishing distribution company for comic books. That's it. There's only one. No one else is willing to do it. More fallout from the speculator boom. But Nash, I can go into Barnes & Noble and buy X-Men or Avengers. You can buy trades, which is another problem. Yes, the average single-issue comic is $4, but that's a sucker's bet. Why, you can buy a collection of 6 issues for a mere 10 American simoleons. What a deal! And yeah, that is a great deal. And that's what a lot of people who still are really into comics would prefer to do. Why spend $4 for 22 to 24 pages with ads? Or you can get 6 times that for $10, no ads, in a nice format that also works well on a bookshelf, that doesn't require polybags and long boxes. They're much more convenient. The trouble there is Diamond. Again, Diamond is the distributor for comics, and they determine sales numbers based not on trades, but generally, there are exceptions, but generally, sales numbers are more weighted toward the sales of individual issues. So while you're out there going, I'm saving my money for the trades, I'm going to get a nice collected edition, because you aren't buying the single issues. That book you're collecting as a trade is suddenly in danger of being canceled because you aren't buying the book, the single issue, which is what gets counted in the sales numbers. Yes, that's stupid. It gets stupider. Do you know a comic book can fail before the first issue even hits the rack? Well, yeah, all these political people object to all that. No. The reason a comic book can fail before the first issue gets to the comic rack is pre-sales. Interest and decisions on what gets to be made a big comic is largely based on pre-sale numbers. Which means if there aren't enough pre-orders for issue 3 by the time issue number 1 comes out, there's not going to be an issue 5. Well, I'll go pre-order right now. You don't do the pre-ordering. Your local comic book shop does the pre-ordering based on word of mouth and customer interest. And the reason they do that is there's no returns. You see, when a local comic book shop buys comics from Marvel to sell on the rack, if those comic books don't sell, Marvel doesn't take returns. The local comic book shop eats the cost. So they have to be very careful about what they expend their capital on, because if they're not, they could run themselves out of business. So what all this very convoluted mess means is, if you, the comic book fan, are not in your local comic book shop pledging fealty to a comic that may or may not even have come out yet, and demonstrating interest in spending $4 every month on that title's going to die. Now, remember at the top of the hour I said that a given issue back in the 90s could sell millions of books per month. Right now, Marvel is lucky to sell 1 million issues of all its books in 1 month. That's every title they sell, all collected together. If they sell 1 million issues of all of those, that's a good month. So between people not buying individual issues, between sales being down, between trades going up, there's also a dwindling audience who are mainly my age, 30 to 40. That are dedicated. These are the last big audience for comic books. And every day a few of us drop out. We just can't do it anymore. We just can't. My pull list years ago I used to get at least 10 to 15 issues a week, not a month, a week. I was big into this shit. The prices kept going up, and I couldn't justify setting aside that much money for comic books every month. And also trade paperbacks. This was awesome. If you want to know what's killing comics, it's people like me who can't afford all of the comics every month anymore, who have other things taking up our time, who don't have a compelling reason to come back. I even indulge in digital, but I can't even justify that for large numbers of comics because the digital books cost the same as the physical ones, so what's the point? New people aren't jumping on because Marvel and DC did not capitalize on that. New people are going over to manga. They're going over to other sources of entertainment, which are cheaper and they consider more fulfilling. If they really want superheroes, they've got the movies, which come out in a timely fashion, a regular order, and for about the price of 2 comic books, you get a fantastic fucking movie. We have all of these other things competing, and that reader base shrinks and shrinks. Now, what could change things? What could turn it around to some degree? Even aside from changing the management, even aside from changing distribution and the money, is new readers. That's where you get Squirrel Girl. That's where you get Gwenpool. That's where you get Miss Marvel. Fantastic book, by the way. And that's where you get creators who come from outside the normal pool to appeal to people who came outside of the old pool, the dwindling pool, the pool who doesn't care anymore, who doesn't have enough disposable income or time to dedicate to comics because they're grown-ups. The people who have more time and disposable, that they're in school, they're in high school, they're in grade school. They're the ones who can read comics. And they don't have the same tastes I do, or did. The medium adapts and changes. I remember stuff from the late Silver Age to the Bronze Age to the Dark Age. The sensibility of comics changed. The way comics were written, the way stories were constructed, they changed. They're changing again, or they're trying to, because these companies are desperate to stay relevant. You're not the target anymore because there's not enough of you to sustain comic books. There's just not. It's simple numbers. I myself, I've scaled back my comics a whole bunch. I'm not even reading anything Marvel or DC anymore. I have 3 comics on my pull list. I say pull list. I get them digitally because I don't actually want to go. And I know they cost the same as physical, but I get them digitally because it's more convenient for me. 3 comics. Wicked and the Divine, Paper Girls, and Saga. And Saga just went on hiatus, but that's all that's left. That's all I'm still reading. That's all that interests me. And that kind of says something. The stuff that's supposed to be pitched toward me doesn't even interest me anymore. What they mean when they say people of color and women and LGBT are killing comics is they mean it's not about them anymore. Their buying power, their that that capitalism they love so much. Their weight as consumers has narrowed, which was inevitable. That happens to every generation. There's a reason why 18 to 36 is the coveted market because of disposable income and because of, time and all that shit. You get much past that, you have responsibilities and your number of hours you can spend on entertainment winnows. It's not about you anymore because it can't be about you anymore. If you truly want the comics medium to survive, you have to accept it's not about you because there's not enough of you anymore. That's what it comes down to. So yeah, $4 an issue is killing comics. Yeah, what's killing comics is digital distribution not being the same price, not being cheaper than the newsstand price. What's killing comics is other options. More people either come in or comics goes away. And you know what? DC Warner Brothers and Disney don't have a big vested interest in comics. They don't. They have a vested interest in the characters and the rights to those characters. That's what they make movies out of. But the comics themselves, they're loss leaders. They're a rounding error. That's the amount of money they bring in. Shit has to change, or shit won't exist. And if that is some huge conspiracy or scandal, I think you don't understand how time works.
We know they don't understand how time works because they've been arguing with Neil Gaiman all day about when he published his stuff.
Yeah. So yeah, that's what it all comes down to. Don't believe the hype. That's what's killing comics. That's what's got to change. And if it doesn't, you know what? Disney, Warner Brothers, they're not going to be terribly put out by it. They'll still own the rights to shit. They can still make cartoons and TV shows. Print comics, honestly, with this kind of bad publicity, guess what? You're a liability now. Good job. Oh. Anyway, lots more to come. Do stay tuned. Wow, I rambled on for a bit there. Why can't I talk faster? Why can't I make my point more quickly and succinctly? I ramble so. We have live What the Fuck is Wrong with You coming up very soon. Let's get some requests on. Great Big C? Okay, I'm down with that. Do stay tuned. What the Fuck is Wrong with You is up and coming. Oh, she's coming. God help us all. It's almost on its way. Gotta practice my dealer voice. No, that's awful. No. Anyway, here we go. By request, Great Big C, Radio Dead Air.